Chapter 1, The Mark of Ashes. Chicago, December 6, 1872. Snow blanketed the streets of Chicago, muting the sounds of a restless city. Horse hooves clopped on frozen cobblestone as Allan Pinkerton stood outside the rail yard at Canal Street, collar upturned against the wind. Behind him, steam hissed from a halted locomotive. In front of him, two uniformed railway agents and a trembling conductor led him toward the rear passenger car, the judge's private compartment. "He didn't answer when we knocked, sir," said the conductor. "So we forced it open when we reached the city. Found him like this." Pinkerton stepped inside. Warmth still lingered in the plush interior, insulated from the bitter weather outside. A silver flask, half full, rested on a velvet-lined table beside a leather ledger and fountain pen. The curtains were drawn. A flickering lantern swung overhead, casting shadows across a grisly scene. Judge Horace Goddard lay slumped in his chair, mouth agape. His eyes were wide, as if frozen in surprise, and a jagged line of blood traced from his left nostril to the collar of his shirt. But it wasn't the death that most disturbed Pinkerton, it was the brand. A circular sigil, burned into the judge's right palm, glowed a sickly red. Pinkerton examined it closely, a triangle within a circle, surrounded by a ring of tiny, precise letters, Latin, perhaps. The skin was charred, but not bloodied. This had not been a struggle. Nothing was stolen? Pinkerton asked. "Far as we can tell," said the younger agent. "The judge boarded in Rock Island last night alone. No known threats. Door was locked from the inside. Windows latched. No one went in or out." Pinkerton's brow furrowed. A locked room death, no signs of forced entry, and a symbol carved in fire. He turned to the leather-bound ledger. The last entry, in the judge's neat hand, was dated midnight, "They know I know." Back at his agency headquarters on Washington Street, Pinkerton laid the evidence across a long table. He called in his two most trusted operatives, Kate Warne, his head female detective, and Timothy Gilchrist, a former Union scout with a sharp eye and steady hand. "This isn't an ordinary murder," Pinkerton began. "The symbol on Goddard's palm matches reports from a case out of Cincinnati last year. A banker found dead with the same mark. Local police dismissed it as a cult suicide. I believe otherwise." Kate stepped closer. "You think a group is behind it?" "I think there's a society hiding in plain sight, one with rules, rituals, and reach. They call themselves the Ashes of Argus." Timothy scoffed. "Sounds like something out of a dime novel." "So did the Knights of the Golden Circle, until we exposed their southern plots," Pinkerton replied. "This isn't superstition. It's conspiracy." Kate held up the parchment found in the judge's pocket, its ink slightly smudged from the cold. "Ashes to power. What does that mean?" "A motto," Pinkerton said. "And a warning." Over the next 2 days, the team investigated quietly. Pinkerton visited Judge Goddard's townhouse in Prairie Avenue. The man had lived alone, a widower, no children. But among the law books and court dockets, Pinkerton found a sealed envelope tucked into a hidden drawer, addressed to A. Pinkerton, private. Inside was a single sheet, handwritten in cryptic. "If this reaches you, I am already dead. The men in hoods are not fanatics, they are officials. Beware the one who wears the eagle ring." The bottom was signed simply, H.G. A strange chill settled over Pinkerton. A judge, fearing for his life, sends a personal warning days before being killed in a sealed railway car. The implications were heavy. Back at headquarters, Timothy brought news. "I tracked down the symbol. It's a variation on the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a secret society tied to Masonic offshoots. But this version's been altered. It's militarized. And the phrase, ashes to power? Kate asked. Timothy nodded grimly. Referenced in some radical post-war pamphlets. It suggests rebirth through destruction, burn down the old to forge the new. Pinkerton leaned against the desk, eyes narrowed. Judge Goddard may have discovered names. Identities. Possibly plans. That's why he died. Kate stepped forward. Then we find out who was close to him. His clerk, his correspondents, his courtroom enemies. Start with court records from the last month, Pinkerton ordered. Focus on cases he presided over that involved land, money, or political fallout. As the snow piled against the windows that night, Pinkerton sat alone reviewing old case files. Something gnawed at him. This wasn't the work of a lone killer. It was too clean. Too symbolic. This was messaging. His instincts, honed from decades of hunting spies and saboteurs, told him one thing: the ashes of Argus were real. And they had just claimed their second victim. Chapter 2, The Judge's Last Ride. December 7, 1872, Pinkerton National Detective Agency, Chicago. Rain melted snow into a grim slush on the streets, but Allan Pinkerton's mind was elsewhere, on the late Judge Goddard and the occult-like brand scorched into his palm. By dawn, his agents had compiled the judge's latest court cases, correspondence logs, and travel records. The findings revealed a tangled net of influence, money, and powerful names. Kate Warne placed a file on the table. His last case involved the land seizure of the Halbert estate, tied to the new railway expansion. He ruled against the Halberts in favor of a consortium called Corvus Trust. Corvus, Pinkerton muttered. Latin for raven. Another symbol of death. Exactly, Kate said. And here's the curious thing, no one seems to know who actually controls the Corvus Trust. It's a shell of proxies and paper. Timothy Gilchrist chimed in. Also found a recurring name in Goddard's recent correspondence, Senator Archibald Wexley. The judge received 5 letters from him in the past 2 weeks. One of them arrived just 2 days before his death. Pinkerton opened the letter. The paper was fine parchment, embossed with the Wexley family crest. But the language was cold, veiled in legalese. Warnings disguised as pleasantries. Dear Horace, I urge you to remain prudent in your judicial conduct. Some stones are better left unturned for the sake of national healing. Warm regards. A.W. Pinkerton grimaced. That's a threat if I've ever read one. Wexley's untouchable, said Timothy. Old Union man turned political kingmaker. Built half the railroad deals after the war. All the more reason to be cautious, Pinkerton said. Men like Wexley don't soil their hands, but the people working beneath them might. At noon, Pinkerton traveled by private carriage to the rail yard where Judge Goddard had boarded the train. Maxwell Station sat outside Rock Island, a quiet post with one signalman, a porter, and a telegraph shack. The station master, an elderly fellow named Winfield Graves, remembered Goddard. Yes, sir. He came alone, dressed in dark wool, hat low. Didn't speak much, but he tipped me a silver dollar. Said he had business in Chicago. Pinkerton showed him the symbol. Graves recoiled. I've seen that. Carved into the post behind the ticket office. I assumed it was some prank by the local boys. He led Pinkerton to a cracked oak beam near the rear of the station. Sure enough, the triangle inside a circle symbol had been etched with a knife, fresh, deep, almost ritualistic. Did anyone else board with the judge? Pinkerton asked. Not in his car. But a man entered the last carriage, claimed he was a newspaper agent heading to Galena. Had a black case with him. What did he look like? Tall. Wore dark gloves. Kept his collar up. Spoke with a flat accent. Not local. Back in Chicago, Kate had followed another thread. She tracked down Judge Goddard's former clerk, a wiry man named Elias Roach, who now worked in a modest law office. Roach was nervous, glancing around the room as if expecting shadows to speak. He said he was being followed, Roach whispered. The judge was paranoid those last weeks. Said he'd found the key in an old ledger, proof of what he called a hidden counsel. Did he show you this ledger? Kate asked. No. But he kept it under lock in his safe. Only said the men behind Corvus weren't just businessmen, they were judges, senators, and Pinkertons. Kate froze. Pinkertons. Roach leaned closer. He said someone had infiltrated your agency. She returned to headquarters that night with unease twisting her stomach. Pinkerton read her report silently. Then he stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the lamplight flickering on the snow-choked streets. Someone within the agency, he muttered. That would explain the silence surrounding Goddard's warnings. And how a man can die in a locked room without a struggle. Timothy entered holding a telegram. Just arrived. It's encoded, but the header reads, "To the Raven's Roost." That's what the Ashes call their meeting point, according to the Cincinnati case. Pinkerton unfolded the message. The cipher was classic, Vigenère, likely, but the key was unknown. Still, one phrase stood out, barely obscured in the pattern, initiation complete. The judge has burned. Burned, Pinkerton whispered. That's how they see it, not murder, but purification. A society that sees itself as divine executioners. A judge silenced before he could speak. A growing sense that the enemy wasn't just hiding in shadows, but smiling across courtroom benches and seated in government halls. Pinkerton turned to Kate and Timothy. We are not hunting a man, he said. We are chasing a religion made of ash and blood. And it's already reached inside our walls. Chapter 3, The Whisper at Maxwell Station. December 8, 1872, Rock Island, Illinois. The wind cut sharp and merciless as Allan Pinkerton stepped off the northbound train once again at Maxwell Station. The platform creaked under his boots. This time, he was not alone. Timothy Gilchrist flanked him, gloved hand resting on the revolver under his coat. They weren't here for questions, they were here for shadows. Inside the dim station, the same porter from days prior, young Jack Doolin, cleaned the tile floor with a stiff brush. He looked up as they entered, startled but silent. Pinkerton offered a slight nod. Evening, Mr. Doolin. We spoke briefly 2 days ago. Yes, sir. About Judge Goddard. We're back because the symbol behind the office post wasn't idle graffiti. Pinkerton leaned on the counter. Do you remember the man who boarded with the black case? Doolin hesitated. I didn't speak to him, sir. He gave me a look. The kind that makes you forget things on purpose. Pinkerton placed a single silver coin on the ledge. Try to remember now. The porter's eyes drifted. He had a mole on his left cheek. Very faint. Like a burn mark that had healed over. I saw it when he adjusted his collar. Timothy took note. Anything else? Actually, Doolin glanced over his shoulder. Something strange happened before Judge Goddard arrived. About an hour prior, I was sweeping near the telegraph lines and found a broken code wheel. Pinkerton straightened. A code wheel? Yes, sir. Brass. Split down the middle like it had been thrown. I hid it. I didn't want the stationmaster to think I broke it. It's still behind the coal bin. They followed him outside. Behind the station, nestled among coal sacks and rotting crates, was a cracked brass cipher disc, half buried in ash and soot. Pinkerton wiped it clean. Latin characters. A rotating dial. Letters etched in patterns. It matched the encryption used in the telegram Timothy had intercepted 2 nights prior. Pinkerton turned to Timothy. Someone discarded this in haste. Likely the man with the black case. Timothy nodded. And if he discarded it, it means 2 things. 1, he thought he wouldn't need it again. 2, he was already inside. Back at headquarters that evening, Kate Warne examined the cipher wheel. She placed the symbols beside the telegram. The phrase, "the judge has burned," is the anchor, she said. If we use that as a key. Pinkerton stopped her. Try ashes. That's the one word we've seen more than any other. Kate adjusted the wheel. The ciphertext trembled into form. Initiation complete. The judge has burned. The raven's roost awaits. December 10th, midnight. Argentum sanctum. Argentum sanctum, Timothy muttered. Holy silver. Pinkerton nodded. It's code. Possibly a location. Kate opened the Chicago City Ledger. There's an old silver refinery near South Halstead called Argent Works. Closed after the war. Rumors said Confederate agents used it for smuggling arms. Sounds like a perfect place for a secret society to hold a gathering, Timothy said. Pinkerton leaned over the table. Midnight, 2 nights from now. If we go in blind, we'll die. We need to know the layout, the exits, and the players. I can get in, Kate said, voice calm. I've infiltrated worse. Let me be a petitioner, someone looking to join. They recruit with whispers, right? I'll follow one. Timothy was immediately against it. Absolutely not. This isn't a bank job or political blackmail. These people burn men alive, Kate. Pinkerton said nothing for a long moment. Then he turned to her. Do you know what you're volunteering for? I do, she said. And if this society has made it inside our justice halls, we need someone to look them in the eyes. That night, Timothy and Pinkerton followed up a lead from the Halberd estate case. The original landholder, Vernon Halberd, lived in seclusion since the judgment. He agreed to meet them at a smoke-choked tavern outside Aurora. Judge Goddard was a good man, Vernon said, nursing a glass of rye. But he crossed someone bigger than himself. Who? Pinkerton asked. I don't know names. But the men who took my land weren't normal lawyers. They carried themselves like clergy, with robes in court, I swear. Not for the trial, but for something else. I saw them whispering, hands clasped behind their backs. All wore silver pins, small triangles. Did one have a scarred cheek? Timothy asked. Vernon paused. Yes. Tall man. Soft-spoken. Like a preacher who's seen hell. Pinkerton tapped the cipher wheel in his coat pocket. I believe that hell has a name. And it gathers in 2 nights. As they rode back through snowy roads toward Chicago, the faint sound of church bells tolled in the distance. But they did not bring peace, only dread. For Pinkerton knew they were now standing at the threshold of something dark, something far more ancient and structured than any criminal syndicate. A secret order. A planned resurrection of power. And a countdown to midnight had begun. Chapter 4, A Code Written in Fire. December 9, 1872, Chicago. Snow flurries danced outside the windows of Pinkerton's Washington Street headquarters as the hour neared midnight. Inside, a map of South Chicago lay spread across the main table, covered in pins, hand-sketched diagrams, and coded phrases. Argent Works, the abandoned silver refinery, loomed like a phantom at the edge of the industrial district. 3 possible entrances, Kate Warne said, pointing with a pencil. 2 on Halsted Street and 1 hidden canal access through a rusted cargo hatch. We'll position lookouts at all 3, Pinkerton replied. But if this is truly a gathering of the ashes, we need eyes inside. You still want to go through with it? Kate straightened her coat. I've been mistaken for a governess, a grieving widow, and a Confederate spy. I can handle a circle of men in robes. Pinkerton handed her a forged letter, an application of allegiance laced with arcane phrases decoded from the cipher wheel. At the bottom, the signature read C.R. Hollister, a false identity they'd constructed based on a real dissenter believed dead. If they believe you're him, Pinkerton warned, they may test you. Kate smirked. Then I'll pass. By dawn, she vanished into the web of whispers that wound through Chicago's underbelly. In dim taverns and smoky parlors, she inquired about the ashes of Argus. Most men either laughed nervously or grew quiet. But in a smokehouse along Ashland Avenue, she was handed a black envelope. No name. No stamp. Inside, a location and a single command. Come with fire, or be consumed by it. A. The address led to a decaying bookshop on an alley off Maxwell Street. When she entered, the bell above the door rang like a death knell. No customers. Just a gaunt man behind the counter, sorting brittle pages. Kate whispered the phrase from the letter, "The phoenix does not die, it judges." The man nodded, walked into the back, and returned with a small silver matchbox. Midnight. Argent Works. The fire will know your face. Kate returned to headquarters under the veil of twilight. Her message was brief but chilling. They believe I'm one of them. Then it's a trap, Timothy said. Pinkerton disagreed. It's worse, it's an invitation. Later that evening, Pinkerton met with Dr. Ellery Quince, a coroner with ties to the old Union spy network. The body of Judge Goddard had remained under private examination at Pinkerton's request. You were right, Quince said, removing a cloth from a metal tray. The sigil on his palm isn't just a burn. It's branded using silver, melted and poured into a searing press. Leaves behind a residue only detectable under gaslight. He handed Pinkerton a small glass vial. That residue matched one other case I've seen, 3 years ago. A body fished out of the Mississippi near St. Louis. Identical sigil. Same branding. Pinkerton's heart pounded. Was it reported? Buried in county records. Death ruled suicide. But the man was missing 3 teeth, had fractured ribs, and bruises around the neck. Someone covered it up. The dead don't lie, Pinkerton thought, but the living bend truth like iron. Back at the agency, Kate prepared for the gathering. Her disguise was flawless, a long wool cloak, dark leather gloves, and a silver pin etched with the sigil. Pinkerton insisted on a final word. If anything feels wrong, you leave. You don't get noble, you get out. Kate nodded. Understood. She tucked a miniature audio transmitter into her glove, a prototype created by a Union Army engineer. It would send short-range signals, enough for Pinkerton and Timothy to hear from their hiding point near the South Canal Gate. At 11:15 p.m., the trio departed quietly in a closed carriage. By 11:47, they reached the edge of the ruined refinery. Smoke from unseen fires curled through cracked bricks and shattered windows. Faint chanting echoed across the canal. Kate stepped down alone. From the shadows, Pinkerton and Timothy watched as she passed through the rusted cargo door and disappeared inside. Silence. Then the transmitter crackled. Hull is circular, maybe 25 present, silver robes, fire in the center. A pause. They're reciting something. Latin. I recognize the judge's name. Suddenly, static. Then a new voice, not Kate's. Brother Hollister, step forward. Another pause. The channel hissed like a snake in the dark. Then. By the silver oath, we burn the old, and raise the new. Timothy's hand gripped his revolver. One flame. One body. One order. Suddenly, Kate's voice returned. They're showing the ledger. Goddard's ledger. They have it, pages torn. Another voice cut her off. Who gave you the sigil? The line went dead. Pinkerton stood. We go in. Now. As they sprinted through the canal path, firelight flashed behind the broken windows. The air thickened with smoke and the acrid scent of molten metal. Inside the refinery, the ashes had formed a circle. At the center stood a black brazier, flames roaring, and beside it, Kate, her hood pulled back, expression unreadable. An elder in silver raised a brand toward her palm. That was when the wall exploded inward and Pinkerton fired. Chapter 5, Masks of the Brotherhood. December 10, 1872, inside Argent Works, Chicago. Smoke billowed through the broken wall of the refinery as chaos erupted. The ashes of Argus, draped in silver robes and stunned by Pinkerton's sudden entrance, scattered like frightened crows. Flames from the brazier licked the rafters, casting warped shadows across the cracked brick walls. Allan Pinkerton moved like a veteran of the battlefield, swift, silent, deliberate. He tackled the elder who had raised the brand to Kate's hand, sending the man crashing into a pile of fallen timber. Timothy Gilchrist burst through behind him, pistol drawn, and took position at the south wall. Hands in the air. Timothy shouted. Drop the brands. Some obeyed. Most fled, vanishing into side corridors and broken stairwells like ghosts. Kate scrambled free from the altar, breathing hard, eyes blazing. They were about to mark me, she gasped. Pinkerton helped her to her feet. Are you hurt? Only in pride. From the corner, a deep voice rang out. So this is how the order ends. With saboteurs and spies. The voice belonged to a tall, gaunt man standing atop a metal platform, robe unfastened, revealing a black vest and crimson sash beneath. A small triangle pin gleamed at his throat, and on his left cheek, a faint scar shaped like a crescent moon. The man from Maxwell Station, Kate whispered. That's him. The man raised his hands mockingly. I am Brother Severin. You've met our symbol, but now you meet our cause. Pinkerton aimed his revolver. You're under arrest, for murder, conspiracy, and sedition. Severin chuckled. You can't arrest a fire, Mr. Pinkerton. The ashes are not a man. We are memory. And memory burns eternal. Then, with shocking calm, he stepped off the platform, and vanished through a trapdoor beneath the stage. "Timothy!" Pinkerton barked. "He's escaping." Timothy bolted toward the platform, but smoke and heat choked the air. From above, burning timbers groaned as the structure gave way. "Out! We need to move," Pinkerton ordered, dragging Kate toward the broken cargo entrance. Flames leapt higher. The brazier overturned, spilling embers like blood across the floor. Outside, they regrouped in the snow beside the canal. Coughing, bruised, but alive. The refinery behind them collapsed in a cascade of sparks and smoke. "They destroyed the evidence," Kate said bitterly. "The ledger, the members." "Not all of them," Pinkerton replied grimly, holding up a scorched silver mask he'd ripped from one of the fallen robed figures. "They left fingerprints behind." By morning, 5 members of the Ashes had been captured. Pinkerton's operatives fanned out across the city, questioning contacts, comparing notes, and tracking associates. The mask, analyzed under gaslight, bore microscopic letters etched along the inner rim, Latin again, but this time decipherable. Lux per seniors renascitur. Light is reborn through ashes. Occult philosophy. Destruction as creation. Justice by fire. One of the captured members, an alderman's clerk named Edwin Moultrie, broke after 14 hours of interrogation. "There are chapters," he wept. "Not just here. St. Louis. Cincinnati. Boston. Anywhere there's power." It began after the war, men who'd lost their faith in government, law, order. They created their own. "Who leads it?" Pinkerton asked. Moultrie shook his head. "No one leads. The ravens' roost changes cities. But they follow the speaker of the flame. He wears the red sash. That's Severin. Why kill Judge Goddard?" "He tried to name them in a federal address," Moultrie confessed. "He had the list, the true list. Severin sent the fire." Later that day, as the city stirred beneath gray skies, Pinkerton met with a contact in the governor's office. Governor Palmer, though sympathetic, was nervous. "You're suggesting a secret society has embedded itself in the state judiciary?" Palmer asked. "That's political suicide." "I'm suggesting," Pinkerton replied, "that the justice system is no longer solely ours. And if you ignore this, they'll burn the courts next." Palmer rubbed his temples. "You've always uncovered what I didn't want to see." "Very well. I'll authorize silent warrants. But if this becomes public, I'll disavow." Pinkerton returned to headquarters late that night. Kate and Timothy were already there, poring over maps and coded letters. Kate looked up. "Severin is gone. But not far. These letters reference a gathering of the phoenix, a new rise. It's set for the winter solstice. That's 11 days from now." Timothy tapped a diagram. "And this, Site B, might be the next meeting point. An abandoned Masonic lodge near Springfield." Pinkerton nodded. "Then we smoke them out. Every cell. Every name." He looked at the scorched mask again, resting like a relic on the desk. "They believe they rise through fire. Let's show them what happens when fire meets steel." Chapter 6, Blood on the Ledger. December 11, 1872, Chicago to Springfield, Illinois. The morning fog rolled over the train tracks like a ghost seeking warmth. Allan Pinkerton sat in the rear car of a government-sanctioned express bound for Springfield. Across from him, Timothy Gilchrist cleaned his revolver while Kate Warne reviewed the decoded ashes letters recovered from the failed Argent Works ceremony. The winter solstice is key, Kate murmured. They believe it's a threshold, some spiritual transition. The flame represents more than ritual. It's control. Rebirth. Pinkerton nodded, eyes fixed on the passing blur of frozen landscape. And the speaker of the flame, Severin, intends to turn this next gathering into a declaration. Timothy looked up. Declaration of what? That the ashes are no longer hiding, Pinkerton said. They want to rise openly. Burn what's left of the old guard. Upon arrival in Springfield, they headed straight to the abandoned Masonic Lodge 2 miles north of the capital. The building stood like a corpse, its pillars cracked, windows boarded, and its doors sealed with wax. But behind the lodge, Pinkerton found something unexpected. A corpse. The body lay face down in the frost, wrapped in a wool coat. Pinkerton rolled it gently. A man, mid-50s, graying hair, eyes frozen wide. A scar on his left hand. Vernon Halberd, Kate whispered. The landowner. The man who warned us. A triangular mark had been carved crudely into his chest. Not burned, cut. A message. Pinkerton spotted a slip of paper pinned to his coat. The ledger was never yours. Seek ashes, find truth. A. The same parchment type as Severin's earlier note. They took the body into town under cover of night and turned it over to the local mortician under a false name. Pinkerton refused to risk exposure. Back at their rented safe house, Kate laid out everything they knew. 5 Ashes members in custody. 2 suicides since the refinery raid. 1 confirmed escapee, Severin. And now this. She gestured to the coded map. The Phoenix Gathering. It's real. Timothy poured a stiff drink. So what's their endgame? Another ritual? No, Pinkerton replied, pacing. It's a transfer of power. Symbolic, yes, but political, too. They're trying to take over a network of influence. And the ledger is the key. Kate frowned. But the ledger burned at Argent Works. Or so we thought. Pinkerton reached into his coat and removed a hidden envelope. Inside was a torn page, partially singed, but bearing Judge Goddard's unmistakable handwriting. It had been tucked inside Halbert's coat. Names, ranks, oaths. The raven's nest is not singular. It spreads in rings. The final ring leads to the eagle. The eagle, Timothy said. Like the ring Goddard mentioned in his letter, beware the man with the eagle ring. Kate's eyes widened. Archibald Wexley. He wears one. Always has. Pinkerton Saturday, which means Wexley isn't just a sympathizer, he's likely a founding member. Maybe even funding the ashes. They worked through the night, tracking Wexley's political movements. Campaign donors. Land transfers. Travel logs. Every thread pointed to one thing: on the winter solstice, Wexley would be in Springfield for a private gala. Not just any gala, a gathering of judges, state senators, and railroad barons. The Phoenix Gathering isn't cloaked in fire this time, Pinkerton said grimly. It's wearing tuxedos. But something else haunted Pinkerton. The page from Goddard's ledger also included a strange string of Latin and numbers. Veritas 1214, in silentio, ignis loquitur. In silence, fire speaks. He pondered it as Kate and Timothy prepared their infiltration strategy for the gala. Suddenly, a knock. Not on the door, but on the window. Pinkerton drew his revolver and crept forward. A figure outside stood shivering under the alley lantern, beaten, clothes torn. It was Elias Roach, Judge Goddard's former clerk. Pinkerton flung the door open. "Roach?" The man collapsed inside, gasping. "They found me. They know I spoke to you." "Who? Who found you?" "Wexley's men. Not police. Private agents. They're not ashes, not branded, but they serve them." Pinkerton knelt beside him. "Why come now?" Roach fumbled in his coat and withdrew a tiny journal, charred, but intact. "The ledger, not all of it burned. I stole the original before they raided Goddard's safe. I've been hiding it for days." Pinkerton opened the journal. Names. Symbols. Meeting dates. Oaths sworn in blood. Dozens of them. It was the true ledger. The Ashes Foundation, exposed. But one name stood out, circled in red. A. Pinkerton. Everyone froze. Kate took the book. "This can't be real." Roach shook his head. "No. It's a setup. They planted your name. To destroy you. If this book goes public, they'll say you were one of them." Pinkerton's jaw tightened. "It's not truth they seek. It's confusion. Misdirection. That's why they kill with ritual, so people question what's real." Timothy muttered, "We need to end this at the gala." "Severin. Wexley. All of them." Pinkerton closed the book. "Then we do it in silence." He looked to Kate. "Let's make fire speak." Chapter 7, The Ashen Chamber. December 21, 1872, Winter Solstice, Springfield, Illinois. The night air hung heavy with frost as the grand chandelier above the Haviland Estate ballroom cast flickering light across silk gowns, dark suits, and polished boots. It was a celebration cloaked in opulence, the Solstice Gala for Illinois' elite. Railroad barons, state senators, judges, and industrial magnates gathered under the pretense of unity. But Allan Pinkerton knew what festered beneath the marble and music. The Phoenix gathering had begun. Hidden in plain sight. Kate Warne arrived precisely at 8, dressed in an emerald satin gown and carrying a black velvet clutch, within it, a miniature transmitter and a derringer. Her hair was pinned high, her lips painted red. None would suspect she was one of Pinkerton's most dangerous operatives. Timothy, disguised as a valet, monitored the perimeter with 2 field agents. Their orders were clear: watch the entrances, log the arrivals, and be ready to strike. Pinkerton, meanwhile, entered last, donning the identity of a foreign financier. He wore a tailored grey suit and monocle, a disguise aided by his Scottish accent and quiet demeanor. No one looked twice. "Wexley is in the West Chamber," Kate whispered over the transmitter. "He's wearing the eagle ring." "Severin?" Pinkerton asked, walking past silver-plated hors d'oeuvres. "No sign yet," she replied. "But I counted 5 men with triangle lapel pins. They're spread out. Watching." Pinkerton weaved through the crowd until he reached the west corridor. There, beyond an ornate wooden door, Senator Archibald Wexley stood in conversation with 2 other men, one a judge, the other the president of the Corvus Trust. The very men who had orchestrated Vernon Halbert's ruin. Wexley's voice was calm, but his eyes flicked across the room constantly. He was expecting something. At 9:13 p.m., the lights dimmed. The quartet string ensemble fell silent. A single chime rang through the ballroom. Then came the signal. A host stepped onto the dais and addressed the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, as tradition dictates, we honor not only the passing of seasons, but the rebirth of order. Tonight, we gather as one. A silver goblet was raised. Every man wearing a lapel pin stepped forward and echoed in Latin, Lux per seniors renascitur. Light is reborn through ashes. Kate whispered into the transmitter. It's them. The ashes. They're everywhere. Suddenly, the ballroom doors closed. Locks clicked. Guards in formal wear posted at each exit. Pinkerton gave the order. Now. Timothy and his agents, already inside disguised as waitstaff, moved fast. Within seconds, 2 Ashes members were disarmed and bound. Kate approached Wexley from behind, pistol drawn beneath her silk wrap. "Don't move, Senator," she hissed. But Wexley simply smiled. Too late. From the eastern balcony, a flare shot into the air, red, smoky, loud. At once, gas lanterns across the ballroom extinguished. Darkness fell like a curtain. Screams. Footsteps. The unmistakable hiss of smoke bombs being triggered. Pinkerton shouted, "Stay low." The fire alarms activated, but no water came. Instead, heavy curtains ignited at the edges of the hall. Panic erupted. In the chaos, a voice rang out. "Let the old world burn." Pinkerton turned just in time to see Severin, face marked in soot, robe hidden under a waiter's uniform, raising a silver brand over a fallen guest. Pinkerton lunged. They collided beside the dais, knocking over the goblet and smashing a marble lion head from the platform base. Severin swung wildly, striking Pinkerton across the temple. Blood clouded his vision. "You don't understand." Severin roared. "Order must die to be reborn." "You're not order," Pinkerton growled, dodging a second strike. "You're rot." With a final shove, Pinkerton drove Severin into the burning curtain. Flames caught his sleeve. He screamed, dropped the brand, and collapsed under a burst of falling timber. Kate rushed in and dragged Pinkerton clear. Timothy and the agents had corralled the guests into the courtyard. Fire brigades arrived within minutes, hoses screaming as they doused the blaze. Severin was found unconscious but alive, his robe scorched, the red sash still visible beneath the embers. Wexley, however, was gone. Disappeared in the smoke. By dawn, 23 members of the Ashes were in custody. Their names spanned industries and counties. The ledger, smuggled from Roach's possession, was handed over to the governor in secret. Springfield would never be the same. Later that morning, as the sun pierced the smoke-stained clouds, Pinkerton stood outside the charred remains of the Haviland estate. Kate stood beside him, bruised but unshaken. "He escaped," she said softly. "Yes," Pinkerton replied. "But the fire is no longer theirs." Timothy joined them, hat in hand. "What do we call this?" Pinkerton looked to the rising sun, then back to the blackened stone. "A warning. That when justice sleeps, others wake." Chapter 8, The Oath Unbroken. December 28, 1872, Chicago, Illinois. The snow had returned to Chicago, blanketing the city in a deceptive calm. Smoke from chimneys mingled with the low winter sun, and the streets buzzed softly beneath muffled wheels and booted steps. Inside the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, the fire crackled gently in the hearth, but the air remained tense. The Ashes of Argus had been wounded, but not destroyed. Severin remained in custody under military guard, held in a private cell within the armory. His burns had mostly healed, but his eyes still glowed with defiance. Pinkerton had visited him twice, each time receiving nothing more than cryptic warnings and thinly veiled threats. "You've done nothing but delay the flame," Severin had said in their final encounter. "Order bends only so long. Then it breaks." Now, Pinkerton sat at his desk, the recovered ledger in front of him, wrapped in oilcloth, locked behind brass clasps, and still stained with soot and blood. Names still needed vetting. Evidence still needed confirming. But they had the foundation. The rot had been exposed. Timothy Gilchrist entered with a telegram. From St. Louis. Another suspected Ashes cell uncovered. The mayor's aide confessed after news of the gala raid spread. Pinkerton nodded. "It's spreading. Their secrecy was their shield. Now it's their noose." Kate joined them next, her arms still in a sling from the gala fire. "We'll never get them all. Not in one sweep." "No," Pinkerton said, "but this is the beginning of the end. Their circle has been broken." Kate placed a photo on the desk. It showed Archibald Wexley, grainy, distant, boarding a steamer under the alias Edward Locke, in New York Harbor. "He's headed to London. Disappeared through diplomatic channels." Pinkerton stared at the image. "Then we follow. No matter how far. The Ashes will find no corner of this world untouched." A knock came at the office door. Elias Roach entered, pale but more composed than the last time they'd seen him. "I came to resign," he said. "I've carried the burden too long. My hands were too close to it all, even if I never truly saw." Pinkerton shook his hand. "You carried the truth when no one else would. That ledger may save the Republic yet." Roach nodded slowly, turned, and left into the snow. Later that evening, Pinkerton stood alone by the window, watching as the gaslights flickered across the icy road outside. The gala, the flames, the ledger, it played through his mind again and again. How close they'd come to losing. He poured a glass of brandy and opened his journal, recording what few would ever know. The ashes of Argus, born from war, fed on fear, and cloaked themselves in justice. Their rise has been delayed. Their symbol dimmed. But they are not gone. A cult may lose its temple, but not its belief. We must remain vigilant, not for them, but for the shape they'll take next. He closed the book and extinguished the lamp. Downstairs, the agency's agents shared quiet conversation, sharpening tools, filing reports. The war never truly ended, it simply changed names. As the clock struck midnight, Pinkerton stood at the fire, staring into the flames. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the silver matchbox Kate had been handed before the refinery ritual. He turned it in his hand. On its side, nearly invisible in the metal's edge, was an engraving. The oath unbroken. He tossed it into the fire. Because theirs wasn't an oath of silence or secrecy. It was the oath to uncover truth. To guard the nation from what lurked in shadows. To stand, always, where fire and darkness met.